Getting this one in for the month just under the wire. So, continuing, and we're actually almost done. Next month will be the last one with the block of commissioned reviews I had to take a look at some 70s and 80s comedies. And I would call pretty much all of these either Zucker Brothers comedies or Zucker Brothers adjacent or in the style of. And this one is just flat out a Zucker Brothers movie. So, The Naked Gun, a continuation of continuation, readaptation, whatever, continuing the ideas of a TV show called Police Squad, which I have never seen. And I remember liking this. It probably helped that I saw it when I was 12. Yeah, that probably helped it go down a bit easier. Watching it now as an adult, I mean, I probably would have liked it more if I hadn't done Airplane as part of this stretch of stuff, because this is Airplane but lazy. This is Airplane with half the wit at best. So I'll give you some specific examples of what I'm talking about. And I also want to be clear, I'm not saying none of this is funny. Some of this got me, but there's whole stretches of it that didn't. And while humor is incredibly subjective and some of it you can chalk up to taste, some of it I just think is generally not a great approach to comedy, or at the very least, it's dealing in an entire approach to comedy that is not to my taste. That's probably the most generous I could be with a fair amount of it. Let's deal with the elephant in the room. Yes, this does feature O.J. Simpson in a featured role. He's not that good, but he doesn't really need to be. The character spends most of the movie unconscious and is really only there to take slapstick damage and get knocked around. He's not even really particularly good at that. It's not worth harping on, nor does it say or reveal anything about him as a human being. For crying out loud, it's The Naked Gun. So let's all just move past that whole thing. Opening theme's a banger. I still like the opening credits. Heck, I like the closing credits. They do joke credits at the end, so it's worth watching the credits on this one, because honestly, some of the best jokes are in there. By and large, when a joke works for me in this, it's something that is done quickly and casually, which is how most of the jokes in something like Airplane were done. You just do the joke and then you move along so you can get to the next joke. Those are the ones that work the best. That is unfortunately not all of them. I'm not even sure I could count that as the standard operating mode of this movie. This has a lot of leaning on just something that I don't know if I ever found it funny. I definitely don't now, which is to really drag out the setup, to make it super obvious what it is that's going to happen that's going to be funny. So, like, you have Leslie Nielsen, who at this point I would say is kind of halfway between his total deadpan of Airplane and like his just goofier, let me pull a weird face stuff that he was doing by the 90s. He's about midway between. I'd say most of the first half of this, he's pretty deadpan. Latter half, it's all just pulling goofy faces. It's weird. But anyways, so you have him meeting our villain, played by Ricardo Montalban, who is a good pull. He's smooth. Even in a goofy movie like this, man, smooth as heck. He was smooth at any age. Oh. Anyways, coming back. So he meets him in his room, which is full of all these expensive things like vases on a glass shelf. And let's draw special attention to this painting that is worth so much. Ooh, let's draw extra special attention to this pen, this one-of-a-kind, priceless pen, impervious to everything except water. Oh, look, there's a fish tank over there. I wonder what's going to happen. Exactly what you expect is going to happen, because they could not have set that up more blatantly. And so going hand in hand with extended, dragged out setups are bits that go on well past the point of the joke. A lot of the stuff with Norbert, who is O.J. Simpson's character, his slapstick bits do that. And I think the intention is to go on so long that it's one of those things where you kind of repeat the joke so much it comes back around to being funny again. Doing that in general rarely works, in my opinion. And I don't think it works here. Because we're just watching him get knocked around again and again and again for extended scenes that I got it. He got hit in the head again. We're still doing it. Okay, we're still doing this. We're still doing this in this scene, and we're going to do it again later. All right. Okay. And that was kind of the feeling I had most of the way through. It's like, okay, there was kind of an inverse proportion of the quality joke and how long they spent setting it up and how long they spent in that joke. The quicker it was, the more likely it was to get a laugh out of me. And again, there are some good jokes in this. Actually, I'd say some of the best ones are legit shots at the police. Like, there's a point where Frank, that's Leslie Nielsen's character, he's like cleaning out his desk or something. I think he got kicked off or he got suspended. I forget what. But it's, he's had his hand in your gun and badge moment. And he's cleaning up his desk and he goes, oh, here's that missing evidence from the whatever case. Look at that. He was innocent. And his boss goes, Frank, he was executed 2 years ago. Like, that's a good joke. No setup. He just finds a bag, says a thing, and then that's a dark joke, but that's a good joke, especially if you're going to make it about the cops. Like, that's a solid joke. It was a solid joke then. It's a solid joke now. And that's the kind of thing I really would have liked this to have done more of. But I've got a specific example to cite to sort of narrow down what I mean when I say this has far less wit than Airplane. I'll make a specific comparison. So in Airplane, you had the cockpit, and all the crew in there had names that seem like perfectly normal names. Like the captain is named Roger, the navigator is named Victor, but they get them in that room after having introduced them, and yeah, that's a name. And you get them in the cockpit so you can have exchanges like, Roger, what's your vector, Victor? Like that, and that's just fun. Like, that's wit. How much that makes you laugh your mileage will vary, but that's wit. That requires sneakily setting it up and being like, oh, yeah, no, that's a normal name. Look what we do with it. Ha! In this, there's a villain called Pap Schmear. Because that's the name of a medical procedure. Pap Schmear is kind of a funny word for a lot of people. And that's it. That's it. There's nothing else done with that. He just has a funny name. So we went from, here's some normal names that we're going to do some work and take some effort to do something funny with, to, funny name. And that's the downgrade, in short. I wonder if part of the problem with this is the fact that it's PG-13. Although that having been said, it's a PG-13 that I'm not sure could get away with some of the stuff that it does if it was done now. And that's not you couldn't tell that joke today, observation. That's PG-13 has gotten closer to what PG used to be at this point in time. Like, there's some blinking you'll miss it nudity, and there's some flat out sex jokes that are not explicit in any traditional sense, but are a little bit like, whoa, okay. Like the safe sex joke. I'd be surprised if a PG-13 could get away with that now. Or maybe they just wouldn't bother to try it. But I do wonder if the downgrade to PG-13 from the R rating that they had on Airplane is part of the problem, because it feels like rather than just taking the edge off some of the jokes, taking the edge off some of the darker death or violent jokes, or, not having, just the camera linger on a topless woman for a little bit like Airplane did, rather than just shaving off the edges, they were like, oh, PG-13. So we should write it for people who aren't adults. We should write it for younger people. We should write it for people who won't figure out the level of joke that we did in Airplane. We should simplify these jokes. We should write this for the child mind. I don't know if that's actually how they approach it, but it's how it feels like they approach it. And honestly, that's kind of me being generous. The unkind way to say it is they just got lazy. Rather than put in the effort that they did in Airplane, they just got lazy. I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt and offering a suggestion for why they thought they should dumb it down. And Airplane's not the wittiest thing in the world, but it's got a heck of a lot more wit than this. And ultimately, that's the most damning thing about it. If you like Zucker Brothers, this is not the movie I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend Airplane immediately. And heck, I think I'd actually recommend Kentucky Fried Movie over this. And parts of that aged horribly. But you can chalk that up to the times. There are parts of this that haven't aged wonderfully, but I look at this overall and I'm like, I think if I hadn't been 12 when I saw this, even at the time that I saw it, not that I saw it in theaters, but like, I don't think I would have found this funny even in my 20s. So, yeah, it's just a general decline, And one of the odd things about watching this was the fact that I have seen all three, but I couldn't remember what parts were from what movie. So like there were bits I'm like, are they gonna have this bit? Then by the end they didn't. I was like, oh no, that must be one of the later movies. Like there's a Weird Al gag in here. Just out of nowhere, I'm like, oh right, and that comes back at the end. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It comes back in the third movie, and he might be in the second movie too. I can't remember now. But like, yeah, they bring Weird Al back, but not in this movie. That's later. So it's just an odd series, and I think unless you have a lot of nostalgia for it, I just think it's the kind of thing that 12 is the right age to watch this. Frankly. You get a little bit of a buzz out of some of the slightly more risque jokes, but ultimately most of it is aimed at a more sophomoric sense of humor. It just is. And that's not me calling you a child if you still find it funny. Like with all things, if you liked this and I didn't, I'm happy for it. Heck, I'm jealous. I would prefer to like most of the stuff that I watch, but it was rough. For me, honestly. Again, some good jokes did pop up, and I don't want to act like that wasn't the case, but they were the exceptions. And the performances are serviceable to solid. They're either as good as they need to be for that character and that joke to work, or they're about as good as this was ever going to be. And that's where I'd slot people like Leslie Nielsen or the guy who plays Ed. And the love interest, whose name I can't even remember, and Ricardo Montalban. Like they give about as good as performances as anybody was going to give in a movie like this. And then most of the rest of the supporting cast that's as good as it needs to be. So there isn't much more to highlight other than the jokes, and the jokes just aren't as good. The Naked Gun. Have you seen it? Have you rewatched it? Am I being overly harsh? I don't know. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills. It was, in fact, how I was commissioned to take a look at this. I've got one more 70s or 80s comedy to do, and I will be doing that next month, and then I'm done with this block of reviews. I've still got so much to catch up on. But in any case, thank you very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. Take a relaxed attitude around here so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Now to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabe Likes the Poodle, Tracy Scrappett, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toka Blahuvian, Pau Barabajoggle, and Mara G. Thank you so much for your support. You can get your name said, maybe even correctly, in the Patreon support tiers. Also, it helps me feed these little buggers.